Hello and welcome. This is Rooflemonger. And my friends, in today's video, I want to talk about the stance character in fighting games. Now, you can have all sorts of fighting games, 2D or 3D. You'll find stance characters in all of them. But what exactly is a stance character in the end? If I say to you, oh, this character's rushdown, you get it. If I say they're a zoner or a grappler, you get it. But if I say they're a stance character, well, what even really is that? I guess it means it's a character that has multiple options to be multiple different things. One of the things about stance characters is, for the most part, they're considered much harder to play than the average fighting game character, except for the times when people don't even think about it and kind of forget they're a stance character and they're considered kind of easy. So in this video, I want to look at just all the myriad kinds of stance characters there are in fighting games. So I guess the first kind of stance character is the simple stance character, because we have Leo Whitefang here in Guilty Gear. And Leo has two different stances, and yet no one exactly considers him like a galaxy brain character. Quite the opposite, if anything, right? So his stances kind of naturally flow from his general game plan. Unlike some of the other characters we'll talk about later in the video, you don't got to think too hard about the stances. You have a right time to do the stance. Usually, you do a combo, you get your knockdown, you go in your back turn stance, and then go from there. Mix-ups, gimmicks, all that kind of stuff. Since the stance is part of the direct flow of his game plan, it's not really considered a stance in the same way some other characters are. It's not considered tricky or hard to learn or master. Basically, you get the knockdown, then you go gorilla mode on the enemy. If you're just otherwise playing neutral, no knockdowns, no nothing, you just go for the regular moveset. You don't worry about back turn stance. You only do back turn stance when you're at the advantage. So simple enough, the game plan sort of writes itself. So stance character, yes. Complex, no. Now, a character that is considered much more advanced, but it's not because of any stances, Ivy and Soul Calibur. Ivy is the longer range character with some surprising options, like say some strong command grabs as well. And she's generally considered a higher skill cap character than most of the rest of the cast. Depending on the game you're in, she actually has a few stances, but in the most recent game, Soul Calibur 6, she only really has the one. So her stance is the Serpent's Embrace, where she wraps her whip sword around her. And you can just go into it, or you can do a variety of moves where if you do a motion or hold a button, you can do the move and then go directly into the stance. So now either you can trip people up and go into it during a block string, or say end a combo with something and you go from there. Now they have to wake up when you're in the stance. And for her, the stance limits the game plan now because she has much less moves, but covers all the core options. One is like the shoulder check, good for combos, and you can also stay in stance while doing it. She has strong options to cover both horizontal and vertical movement. She can cover anything she wants very easily. Even gets a lot of damage if you can get her just frame, and I record this on pad, so I'm not doing the just frame on here, but it's good damage if you can get it. Basically, she has a lot of options to keep you guessing. She can cover all your evades, she can get some cool moves in, and she even has a pretty decent low option that catches people sleeping. And speaking of catching people sleeping, she can also sneak in her extra special command grabs as well. So if you just block and wait it out, you might get got. So is Ivy tricky? Yeah, she is. But is it because of the stance? No, not really. The stance is just about the easiest part of her game plan, if anything. For her, the stance reduces your options, so it actually makes her easier to play overall. So like Leo, it's another simple, easy mode stance. Now, the kind of stance character where I believe people started getting tripped up is the multi-stance character, where they can have a stance that doesn't have that many options, but they got a lot of stances. Any one stance by itself is not that big of a deal, but when you start adding all the options together between all the stances and all the moves, it can get a bit overwhelming. Someone like Lei Wulong, great example, because he's got a pretty expansive move list, and he's in fact not even the biggest move list you're going to see out of a character in this video. But yeah, 174 moves, that's pretty big. So for someone like Wei Wulong, you need to know the basic moveset, that's core, but you also need to know your stances, like the snake stance. This and all the other stances as well, you can go into them directly, or you can do moves that go into them, or you can be in the stance and then go into other stances and all that kind of craziness. So for Lei, we got snake stance, we got dragon stance, we got panther stance, we got tiger stance, we have crane stance, We have Sidewinder, which is like lying down on the ground. He can do things from back turn, which is pretty popular in all the games, like Ione in Dead or Alive is all about back turn moves. He has a drunken boxing stance, and has all sorts of moves you would expect from that. A Phoenix stance, and even a little baby sitting snake stance. Now, I feel like it's characters like Lei here that give the stance character the perception of difficulty that it has, because this is a lot to learn. Because not only do you have to learn it, right, and it's a lot there, but if you're an enemy fighting this character, you also have to learn all the stuff they're going to do as well, because if you don't know what they're capable of, you're never going to be able to defend against it, right? So there's a lot of knowledge checks for both players, basically, and that's what can intimidate people. Leis are also a multi-stance character, if you will, because we have Lei Wulong in Tekken, and we have Lei Fei in Virtua Fighter, who is much the same, in that he is a character with a large base moveset, and also tons of mini stances that also have a bunch of moves in them as well. Lei Fei's stances, name-wise, are a bit less memorable than Lei Wulong's, but he's got High Shiki, he's got the Boktai stance, the Doku Ritsu Shiki stance, the Nihon Shiki stance, the Koku Shiki stance, the Suraikon Shiki stance, and the Kyo Shiki stance. And any Lei Fei player worth his salt knows how to put them all together and do the infamous stance. So this Lei has a million moves as well, thanks to all the stances. And yeah, these kind of characters, you will see much less of them than any other given character usually in a fighting game, just because the move list scares people off. It feels like you're learning more than one character's worth, like you're having to put in more effort than the average character to get the same amount of result. And frankly, not everyone wants to deal with that. And then we have the full stance characters, where you legitimately are learning more than one character. Full stance characters are quite rare, but they are legitimately multiple characters in one. Fantastic example is Gen from Street Fighter. He has Mantis stance and Crane stance. Not only is each stance have completely different special moves, they have completely different normals, his walk speed and his jumps are completely different in the two stances as well. So even how he basically moves around the screen changes from stance to stance. Is Gen considered difficult? Yes, absolutely, especially over the lifespan of Street Fighter 4, because you're basically learning two characters in one, and you have to know the right times when to switch, when is the right moment for one moveset, when's the right moment for the other moveset. Make a bad call? It could have made the right call in the other stance, and you might lose the game because of it. So even though a character like this can be considered intimidating to some, the one thing, at least in the Street Fighter 4 days, I did notice is Gen players were generally well respected. I think it's very fitting Gen is like the ancient martial arts master, right? Because to me, man, if you were playing Gen back in the day and you were good with them, to me, you were that martial arts master. You're better than me, because I could never figure out the character. So the full stance character archetype is definitely rare, not represented that often in fighters, but I feel like it comes with a good deal of respect, if anything. Another good example of this kind of character is Vanessa in Virtua Fighter. She has offensive stance and defensive stance. Each stance is basically an entire unique character, and she has well over 200 moves thanks to that. Defensive stance is full of a lot of unique properties you won't really find anywhere else, like she automatically counters punches standing perfectly still. Forward punch kick, which technically is negative on the moves, but it's so super delayable you'll never know when it's your turn. Stuff like down back one, which is ridiculous. It automatically goes under all highs, and has a special property what we call sabaki, which means it also eats up the majority of lows. She has quite a few moves like this in defensive stance, so she can keep taking turns over and over if she knows what your attacks are going to be. And also, she has an above average throw game as well. Tons of neat tricks, but the thing you're giving up is her combos in this stance really suck. Big toolbox, low damage, basically. Offensive stance is the flip. Now we have all sorts of juggles, all sorts of combo starters, but not a lot in the way of subtlety. It's pretty straightforward, all things considered. Also has the tackle, which you can cancel a lot of strings out of, so if they're overly defensive, you can just keep them blocking. You do not complete your full string. You slam them to the ground and beat the tar out of them. Also not bad for gimmicky ring outs if you are so inclined. So yeah, for the most part, stance characters are just kinda hard, and the public perception can definitely scare people away. I think a good example is the upcoming Street Fighter 6. In the betas, Chun-Li, who, let's just put it out there, is one of the most popular video game characters, let alone fighting game characters. One of the most popular video game characters of all time, And in my time with the betas, she was the least played character because she is a stance character now in Street Fighter 6. That one addition to her moveset now made her an icon in gaming, the least played character, which is kind of crazy. So it definitely goes to the public perception of just how scary the stance character is if people don't want to play Chun-Li. Now, it's not to say it's not a worthy endeavor to add to your game though, because the stance character definitely rewards the people who do want to put in more time. I am a firm believer that there should be a character for everyone, and for a lot of the lab monsters out there, a lot of people who just like the theory of fighting games, the stance character is exactly what they're looking for. That said though, this is something I would legitimately love to hear what you guys think, so post in the comments below, what do you think about stance characters? Do you enjoy them, or do you kind of avoid them? Post it in the comments below, and otherwise, well, I guess we're at the end of the video. So thank you very much for watching. Hope this video has found you well, and go out and play some fighting games.